event on the calendar saw the Absa Off-Road Championship venture into the Free State for the first time with the Human Auto 400 based in Bloemfontein. The major city in the Free State has seen enormous growth in recent years and is also the judicial capital of South Africa. Bloemfontein has grown into a vibrant and cosmopolitan city and has a rich sporting heritage. Started 60 years ago, Human Auto is a family business located in major centres in the Free State and Northern Cape, with the penultimate round of the Absa Series bringing mainstream national championship motorsport back to the region. Race headquarters, the start and finish and the designated service points were all located at Sun International's Windmill Casino complex, situated alongside the N1 highway.
Events that make up the 8-race Absa Off-Road Championship draw competitors from throughout South Africa and neighbouring territories. With professional management and a tried and tested infrastructure, the Absa Series is a jewel in the South African motorsport crown, and the registration process prior to races is a smoothly run operation. The pit layout and the proliferation of team transporters also add to the aura of professionalism that surrounds off-road racing in South Africa.
With the Human Auto a new event on the calendar, there was the added air of expectancy in the pits as the clock started to run down towards the start of the Donaldson Prologue to determine start positions for the race. After two back-to-back disappointments, the Factory 4 team was determined to make the trip to the Free State a profitable one.
We desperately need a good result. We've targeted this event to win it, and that's what we want to go out and do. Human Auto, it's their 60th anniversary tomorrow, and we'd love nothing better than to give Human Auto and Ford Motor Company a win tomorrow.
The successful Rubicon Racing squad is based in Bloemfontein, with team principal Peter Ruthven taking time out to list some of the benefits the race held for the Free State and the province's capital city.
I think for Free State is put us on the map for the national series. It brings people to Bloemfontein. It invests about 5 million rand over a weekend in Bloemfontein that wasn't here. And it brings tourism to Bloemfontein that we need.
After a couple of successful outings in Class E, medical man Johan de Lange made a quantum leap into the Premier SP class in the production vehicle category. Buying the ex-Chris Deploy Toyota Hilux put de Lange in fast-forward mode.
I think it's summarized by my grey hair. I don't have time to go through E-Class 2 years, Class D 2 years, and then SP. So we decided to do it, and yeah, here we are. I did a few laps on the day that I decided to buy it, and we will learn as we go along.
By contrast to de Lange, veteran Hannes Grobler has legendary status in South African motorsport. Grobler is an off-road racing elder statesman, but had a tough act to follow after winning the Toyota Desert Race in the RFS BMW.
No, I think we're going to just get on and do our own thing. You know, it's the big thing is I think Chris has got the best chance of winning the championship. You know, we have to get the car still to the end to win the championship. I think the pace is going to be a little bit harder, and you know, if we want to win the championship, you know, we need basically to win both the last two races, you know, so it's not going to be easy.
In a tight championship, race leaders Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst went to Bloemfontein with an 11-point lead over Duncan Faast and Rob Howie, with Hannes Grobler and Henny Terstegen a single point further back.
The top 5 seeds in the Production Vehicle Championship draw start positions for the Donaldson Prologue, which determines race starting order. Crews don't like being number 1 on the road, but Chris Visser was unperturbed about playing a pathfinding role.
No, I don't know. I guess especially with this route, it's new for everybody, and we're first on the route, and I enjoy it. I really enjoy it because it's. I know the guys are coming from behind, so I'll push as hard as I can.
With crews about to dip their toes into untested waters, there was plenty of pre-prologue tension. Teams had no idea of what lay ahead for them, where route conditions were concerned. And the atmosphere as crews waited for the start was a little more tense than is usually the case. With 5 teams still in a mathematical chance of winning the Production Vehicle Championship and a tight situation at the top of the points table, crews were playing for high stakes. The Donaldson Prologue is a race within a race, and with little to choose between the top teams in the highly competitive SP class, a good grid position is as important in off-road racing as it is in Formula One. With this in mind, Donaldson Prologues are high-risk sprint races that turn into hectic affairs, with often dire consequences for crews who run into trouble out on the route.
From the start at the Windmill Casino Complex, the prologue route ran north via the old Brandkop racetrack to the popular Stuck-in-the-Mud Resort and the De Brugge Army Base. Total distance for the prologue was 60 kilometers, and in keeping with the trend on ABSA off-road events, there were plenty of spectator vantage points.
The Team Castrol Toyota Hilux factory crew of Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton have made a habit of winning prologues this season and were at it again on the Himon Auto 400. The pair are hugely experienced, with Houghton a multiple South African off-road and rally champion, while Taylor has a tight grip on this year's Bridgestone Production Car Championship in national circuit racing.
Although Taylor and Houghton have put themselves in a position to win races this season, the ABSA Off-Road Series has not been kind to factory teams. Privateers won all but 2 of the 6 races run prior to the Free State outing, and the Team Castrol Toyota pair cut it fine on the prologue. They were just 4 seconds ahead of the impressive Thomas Rundle and former SA champion Johan Moore in the Baden Tyre Services Nissan Navara. Behind the ex-factory Nissan, Hannes Grobler and Henny Terstegen continued their good form in the RFS BMW X3. The Toyota 1000 Desert Race winners were just 5 seconds behind the Baden Tyre Services Navara entry, with the leading crews completing the 60-kilometer prologue in just over 41 minutes. With a podium finish on the 4x4 MegaWorld 400 and a win on the Toyota Desert Race, the RFS BMW has been a revelation in its first season, with Grobler insisting the car is still in a development stage.
Donaldson Prologues regularly produce surprise packages, and the Rustenburg-based father and son crew of Willem and Dana Force duly obliged this time round by setting the 4th fastest time in the Fossies Toyota Hilux. In only their second full season of racing, the enthusiastic Rustenburg pair were involved in a huge accident on the Sun City 400, but bounced back to score points on the 4x4 MegaWorld 400. More disappointment followed in Botswana on the Toyota Desert Race, but an impressive prologue saw them finish only 14 seconds behind the RFS BMW. The Force combination had 15 seconds in hand over championship leaders Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst, who were a little disappointed with 5th place in the RFS Toyota Hilux. Behind them, Gary Berthold and Andre Vermeulen still had a mathematical chance of lifting the production car championship in the Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux, and were just short of a minute behind prologue winners Taylor and Houghton.
A turbo problem hampered the diesel Team Ford Ranger of former South African champions Neil Woolridge and Kenny Schulthammer. It was an early setback for the crew, and they laboured to a disappointing 7th place. There were also problems for championship contenders Duncan Force and Rob Howie in the second factory Team Castrol Toyota Hilux. A persistent misfire dropped them down the pecking order, and they finished in 8th place with only 7 seconds to spare over local crew Lodebrain and Rian Greiling in the nicely turned out Rubicon Ford Ranger.
A steady run took Christian de Plooy and Henk Janse van Vieren into 10th place in the RFS Toyota Hilux. The young Pretoria-based crew had picked up points in 4 of the 6 events so far and were lying 10th in the championship, but were among the list of non-finishers in Botswana. Next up were Peter Ruthven and Rudy Brits in the Rubicon Toyota Hilux, with the Bloemfontein crew coming off an encouraging 7th place on the Toyota 1000 Desert Race. Another Bloemfontein crew had an even better result in Botswana, with George Barkhuizen and David van Wyk bringing the AIM Toyota Hilux home in 4th place overall.
Going along steadily in only their second outing in an SP Class entry were reigning Class E champions Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux. The Toyota Hilux was previously campaigned by Ramon and Maret Bezuidenhout, and Visser, brother of championship leader Chris, and Leroux were a scant 6 seconds ahead of another Free State crew in Kobus van Tonder and son-in-law Freddie Kriel in the Unifreight Ford Ranger. In a close finish between a Toyota, Ford and Nissan, Sun City 400 winner Terence Marsh and stand-in navigator Richard Leake were only 7 seconds behind the Unifreight car in the first of the Regent Racing Nissan Navaras.
After 2 disappointing outings in the new N1 4x4 Toyota Land Cruiser, the Louis Weichelt-Johan Smallberger combination finally came good, with the pair the first car home in Class D. Weichelt and Smallberger were running ahead of impressive Class E leaders Hein Moelman and J.D. Wolfhard in the 4x4 MegaWorld Toyota Hilux. Chasing after the Class E car were the Class D teammates Dion Venter and Ian Palmer, who won in Botswana in the new 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux, built by former Toyota factory crew chief Mark Jordan. Not far behind Venter and Palmer were Northwest crew Malcolm Koch and Johan Burger, who were running second in Class E in another Toyota Hilux. A third 4x4 Mega World crew in Pikkie Labuskaghni and Rikus Erasmus were a solid third in Class E, with Moelman Wolfhard, Koch Burger and Labuskaghni Erasmus looking to atone for the Toyota 1000 Desert Race non-finishers. Gerald Leroux and Willem Pretorius were also Botswana non-finishers in the Rubicon Racing Ford Ranger, along with Land Rover pair Jack and Cyril Oosthuizen, who were nearly 4 minutes behind the Class D leaders.
Motor racing can be a cruel sport, and after dominating Class E this season with 3 wins in 6 races, championship leaders teenager Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable crashed out of the Himan Auto 400.
Young Woolridge and Huxtable were steaming along when the Team Ford Ranger hit a deep ditch at speed. The incident saw a shaken Woolridge taken to hospital in Bloemfontein with a back injury that could see him miss the final race of the season.
Back at race headquarters at the Woodmill Casino Complex, it was time for the Donaldson Prologue inquests to begin.
Ja, ek moet sê ons was baie vinnig geweest. Ons het ongelukkig volgende eerste posisie getrek. So was vir ons nog al 'n redelike roete soek. Maar ek moet sê dit was lekker geweest. Dus party plekke was tegnies, party plekke vinnig en meeste van die plekke was maar vinnig geweest. So ja, maar het was lekker geweest.
I think we've got the second best time in SB class, so we're very happy with that. You know, we've done a lot of work on the car, you know, between Botswana and now. Sorted out our overheating and our engine problems. So yeah, we're really happy with today's result.
Ja, hy was lekker vinnig geweest. Baie breed, paai is baie breed, so jy's heeltyd daar hoog in die rad in. En dan hulle het baie paar sandstukkies wat moeilik is, maar die bakkie sukkel om weg te kom in. Soos amper soos daar in die Kaapse sand. Maar as daarom net klein stukkies, dan is dit weg. Maar verder is die roete lekker, is vinnig, baie vinnig.
Introducing the Mahindra Thar 4x4 from only 169,900 Rand. Mahindra since 1945.
This Monday, the Baggies aim to continue their steady climb up the table.
Absolutely beautiful.
Fancy their chances against a resilient Blackpool outfit. Blackpool versus West Brom, available in HD. Make the headlines where world football lives. Broadcast brought to you by MTN, everywhere you go.
If you know who you are, there's nothing to prove. The One Gentleman, the new fragrance by Dolce & Gabbana. And in the end, it's better to be the one.
With just 24 points separating the first 4 crews in the Special Vehicle Championship, the Himan Auto 400 was an important event for title contenders, and the race had the potential to make or break title challenges. They like to start them young in off-road racing, and the sport is family-orientated. With kids exposed to a racing culture from an early age, there were plenty of young stars of the future in the pits. For the grown-up kids, there was a race to be won or lost, and for championship leaders Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau, it was a time to consolidate.
I think we had a lot of fun during the year. We had some good events, but now it's time to consolidate and try and win the championship.
For Class P leaders Johan van Staden and James Rousseau, it was much the same story, with the Atlas Copco crew looking to build on a comfortable lead.
21 points is good, but we would like to add a little bit of extra buffer to that points, make sure it's really there for us.
Consolidation was also the name of the game for veteran Cape driver Besper Seidenote and daughter-in-law Lindy, who were looking to extend their lead in the Class B title stakes.
Well, yes, we have a nice lead. Unfortunately, on the desert, we had a bit of a misfortune. We hope to see it right today.
Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau held a 12-point lead over Cully and Quinton Sulwald in the Special Vehicle Championship, with Johan van Staden and James Rousseau and Herman and Wichard Sulwald also within striking distance.
The special vehicles also draw for Donaldson Prologue start positions, but with the production cars out on the route first and a 5-minute dust gap, Quinton Sulwald was quite happy to have drawn first on the road.
You know, it's actually perfect. There's 10 buckies ahead of us, so hopefully they'd open up the route a little bit. 5-minute dust gap, perfect for us. We're happy with it.
Between them, Cully and Quinton Sulwald and Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau have won 4 times this season, with the Sulwalds also picking up 3 second places. Starting behind them were Century Racing crew Colin Matthews and Alan Smith, who are regarded as prologue specialists, and the pair got the start at the Windmill Casino off to a spectacular beginning.
The flying Colin Matthews and Alan Smith continued their spectacular progress in the Century Racing CR3 out on the route and set the fastest time of the prologue. The pair are arguably the quickest crew among the special vehicle ranks, but have been hampered in recent seasons by a dodgy reliability record. The crew were also rocked by a 15-minute penalty for deviating from the route, and that effectively knocked on the head hopes they had of an overall win. The penalty imposed on Matthews and Smith brought a touch of controversy to the prologue, but Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau were also in a spot of bother when Matthews and Smith went flying past the total porter. The CR3 threw up a rock that narrowly missed a disgruntled Rousseau, who could have been seriously hurt. The rock also destroyed a mounting that left an in-car camera flopping around inside the car.
There were plenty of vantage points along the route for enthusiasts, with the penalty imposed on Matthews and Smith elevating Bevan Berthold and Danny Stassen into first place in the new Lab 88 bat. The penalty invoked further controversy when race stewards, quoting safety interests, ruled that Matthews and Smith could start second on the road behind the Lab 88 bat. That dropped Herman and Wichard Sulwald back to third in the Sulwald Racing SVR and left them 40 seconds adrift of Berthold and Stassen. A superb performance took Mark Corbett and Rudy Balzar into fourth in the futuristic-looking Century Racing CR2 and gave them a healthy advantage in Class P.
A disappointing prologue performance left Cully and Quinton Sulwald languishing in 5th place in the Elegant Fuel bat, with the pair nearly 90 seconds off the pace. The Palabora-based father and son team came under little pressure from reigning SA champion Evan Hutchinson and off-road motorcycle star Daryl Curtis in the 4x4 Motorite Revo. At the end, only 15 seconds separated the two cars. The gap between the Motorite car and another father and son combination in Nardis and Louis Alberts was even closer, with just 4 seconds separating the Motorite crew from the Rapsa bat. Next up were championship leaders Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau, who apart from flying stones, were also having to contend with an intermittent brake problem that was hampering progress in an aging total porter.
Steady progress took Johan van Staden and James Rousseau into 10th overall and second in Class P, with the Atlas Copco bat 68 seconds behind class leaders Mark Corbett and Rudy Balzar. Next up in Class P were Swaziland crew John Thompson and Clinton McNamara in a Zarko Magnum, with cool conditions, gusting winds and intermittent light rain doing nothing to keep down dust levels. Thompson and McNamara were being chased by Toyota 1000 Desert Race winners Johan and Dion Besadenhout in the Adenko bat, with the brothers ending up just 6 seconds behind the Swaziland pair. Next up were Northern Region's Championship regulars Marius and Yolinda Fourie in the aging PHB bat, with Yolinda back in the car after missing the Toyota 1000 Desert Race, where Marius was partnered by his father.
The Class B battle was a fight between two veteran drivers. Out in front were Katsia Labaskachny and daughter Sandra in the Ray Sonic Zarko, with the pair eventually opening up a lead of 57 seconds over Bez Besadenhout and daughter-in-law Lindy in the Adenko bat. With a healthy lead in the championship, the Cape Town pair were in a happy position and were able to drive for points rather than wins.
Back at a wet race headquarters, it was again time for post-prologue postmortems.
Yeah, well, we're down here in Bloemfontein in the platteland, as they call it, and the time trial proved that. It's just flat, you know, very, very flat terrain. It was an interesting time trial. That's something we've never had before, very, very fast, some big open roads. So we don't really have the top end anymore with our little car. But we've managed to, I think we've managed about a 4th place. So if it carries on rain like this, it'll be great. I'll be doing the rain dance tonight because obviously that'll work in our favour. Yeah, we'll see what, we only did 60 k's today. I think there's about 140, 150 to go tomorrow out on the route. And there's a couple of koppies to work our way out through. So hopefully those are nice and technical and it isn't too open and mundane, but we have to see what tomorrow brings.
Very interesting. About 10% of the route, I would say, was rough, and especially there at stuck in the mud and at the tracks in the army area. So that was very interesting. We had quite a moment there over one of the jumps. But about 90% of the route is fast, rally type sections, and obviously the guys with a little bit of more experience than us in rallying will do very well. But it's a fast race, lovely to be here, and something new. I believe tomorrow will be more or less the same area, the same type of racing. And yeah, we'll go out and do our best there.
The Free State weather was still a little dodgy on race day, with service crews having to do a little house cleaning as the countdown to the start began. There was plenty of cloud cover about, with the prospect of a wet day ahead. As usual, there were last-minute checks and changes to be made to vehicles, with pre-race tensions starting to mount. Bevan Berthold was relishing the fact that he would be first on the road in the Lab 88 Bat and had his race plan all mapped out.
It's nice to be in front, so you know now they've got to come and attack. So we see who comes and when. I think the first 60 Ks we've done, so there should be all right. We then got another 100 Ks that are sight unseen, and obviously leading then is not easy. You can take wrong turns and that. So I hope the first loop just to see how it goes, and then in the second loop when you know where you're going to go and get them back if they come, you know.
While Bevan Berthold was full of confidence, former off-road and rally champion Richard Leek was making a once-off return to racing after a 3-year break and was impressed with the progress made in the ABSA Off-Road Championship.
Yeah, it's really exciting when off-road in South Africa has really moved forward in leaps and bounds, and it's so nice to see the professionalism of crews running all types of vehicles. It's really impressive.
While enthusiasts mingled with race crews and took advantage of photographic opportunities, production vehicle leader Anthony Taylor also had his mind on the tactical approach for what promised to be a tough day at the office.
Look, I'm in the front now. It's only 4 seconds ahead of Thomas, so I'm going to have to keep an eye on him. But the big thing for me is to try and stay out of trouble and just bring it home to the end, stay in front, and it's going to be interesting. You know, again, I'd like to win this one. It's Meg's last motorsport event for Castrol, so I'd like to go out with the win for her.
Crews have their own way of dealing with pre-race tension, but nerves soon settle once the action gets underway. Leading away the field in the Lab 88 Bat, Bevan Berthold and Dani Stassen had the advantage of a clear road ahead with no dust to worry about. Also in their favour was knowledge of the first 60 kilometres of the route, which had been covered on the Donaldson Prologue. Setting off 5 minutes behind Berthold and Stassen with a Century Racing pair of Colin Matthews and Alan Smith, who were the only team in the field not racing according to real time. The pair still had a 15-minute penalty hanging over them, and this would be factored into their finish time at the end of the race. Racing to real time means the old system of cars leaving at 2 or 3 minute intervals known as dust gaps is no longer in operation. Cars now set off according to the times they posted on the Donaldson Prologue. In many cases, there are only seconds separating cars, and this leads to some hectic action from the word go. Herman and Vichard Sulwald were followed out of the Windmill Casino complex by Mark Corbett and Rudy Balzar in the second Century Racing entry, with Cully and Quinton Sulwald next away in the elegant Fuel Bat.
The cameras were out in force at the start of the Motorite Revo 14x4 of reigning champion Evan Hutchinson and Darryl Curtis, starting ahead of the Rapsa Bat of Nardis and Louis Alberts. It was behind the Rapsa entry and the team total quarter of championship leaders Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau that the fun started, with a gaggle of cars setting off nose to tail.
cars not yet out of the Windmill Casino complex, dust was already starting to be a problem, and it was going to get a whole lot worse once competitors were deeper into the route.
The first 40 kilometers of the route were a repeat of the Donaldson Prologue, with cars running north parallel to the N1 highway towards the De Brugge military area, which would be closed to spectators.
It did not take long for Colin Matthews and Alan Smith to catch Bevan Berthold and Dani Stassen. The Century Racing CR3 bombed past the Lab 88 batch shortly before the quaintly named and popular Stuck in the Mud spectator point, and quickly began to open up a gap. Matthews and Smith had an awful lot of hard work ahead of them if they were going to work off that 15-minute penalty and set off as though they wanted to clear the decks in the first 40 kilometers. Berthold and Stassen were prepared to let them go, but were also being chased down by Herman and Wichard Sulwald, who had got off to a fast start in the Sulwald Racing SVR. The Sulwald started the day fourth in the overall championship and needed a good result to stay in contention.
Mark Corbett mentioned before the start that he and Rudy Balzar had their sights set on an overall win in the Century Racing CR2 that had been built to Dakar Rally specifications. Corbett's father, Ernest, won Class P in the car in last year's Sun City 400, with Corbett and Balzar hoping to emulate Johan van Staden and James Rousseau, who made history early in the season, when they became the first Class B crew to win a national event overall. Corbett and Balzar were being chased by Cully and Quinton Sulwald, whose immediate task was to stay ahead of championship leaders Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau in the Total Porter. Evan Hutchinson and Darryl Curtis were going well in the Motorite Revo 1 and had also picked up a few seconds on the Sulwalds in the Elegant Fuel Bat. Nardis and Louis Alberts were in the thick of action, as were Variawa and Rousseau, who needed to start picking up places. At this early stage, the Total Porter was 90 seconds behind the leaders, but had built up a good head of steam.
A little further back, the Atlas Copco Bat of Nick Harper and Kevin Hume was leading the Swaziland father and son pair of John and Sharon Moore in a Chenoweth, with Johan van Staden and James Rousseau running second in Class B, right on the tail of the two Class A cars. Behind the Space Frame trio, production vehicle leaders Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton were involved in a ding-dong battle with Naheem Musaji and Rehan Bodania in the Max's Tyre Rack Porter. Musaji and Bodania had found a way past Thomas Rundle and Joan Moore, but in the dust were finding it difficult to find a way around the Team Castrol Toyota Hilux. Behind the dueling pair, Rundle and Moore were trying to fight back in the Baden Tyre Services Nissan Navara and were being chased by the RFS BMW of Hannes Grobler and Henny Terstieger.
A pair of old tyres makes a good substitute for a camera tripod, with the action at spectator points coming thick and fast. The Rustenburg father and son team of Willem and Dana Force were being chased by the RFS Toyota Hilux of championship leaders Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst. The RFS Toyota pair were ahead of nearest challengers Duncan Foss and Rob Howie, but needed to get to grips with the Grobler Terstieger BMW. In the dust and on a tight and tricky section of the route, the Fossies were proving a tough nut to crack.
A little detour finally saw the championship leaders ease their way ahead of the Rustenburg pair, opening up the road ahead for Visser and Badenhorst to start chasing Grobler and Terstieger and the Baden Tyre Services Nissan Navara of Thomas Rundle and Joan Moore. Behind the forced car, Swaziland pair John Thompson and Clinton McNamara were hustling along in the Zarko Magnum and were being chased by the Atlas Copco Toyota of Gary Berthold and Andre Vermeulen and the Adenko Bat of Johan and Dion Besadenhout. The dust was now a serious problem, making for risky or impossible overtaking. Included in a bunch of closely bunched cars were the Team Ford Ranger of Neil Woolridge and Kenny Scholthammer, the Team Castrol Toyota Hilux of Duncan Force and Rob Howie, the Rubicon Racing Ford of local crew Loder Brain and Rian Greyling, and Christian de Ploy and Henk Janse van Vieren in the RFS Toyota Hilux.
Little jewels in the dust were developing throughout the field, with the White Star Racing Bat of Botswana-based driver Keith du Toit and Lesotho resident Ashley Thorne being chased by a gaggle of cars. Included in this bunch were Marius and Yolinda Fourie, the Regent Racing Jimco of Archie Rutherford and Mike Lawrenson, and local crews George Barkhuizen and David van Wyk, and Peter Ruthven and Rudy Brits in Toyotas running in the SP class. Tacked on the back of this group and in a little clean air were Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux in the Hekmar Toyota Hilux.
Overtaking in the dust was a major problem, and when Terence Marsh and Richard Leake caught Richard Schilling and Keith Solomon on a short stretch of tar road, the Regent Racing pair took the opportunity to nip past the AceCo. Then it was back into the dust with visibility an immediate problem, with Marsh and Leake now stuck behind the Unifreight Ford of Kobus van Tonder and Freddie Creel.
Kobus van Tonder and Freddie Creel are based in Harrismith and were another of the Free State crews out on home territory. They were now coming under attack from Marsh and Leake, with Schilling and Solomon tucked in behind the Nissan Navara and being chased by Bodo Berthold, at the age of 68, the oldest driver in the field, and Philip Hurselman in the Atlas Copco Bat.
It had not been a happy season for Kobus van Tonder and his son-in-law, with only one finish and 5 starts. They also missed the Toyota 1000 Desert Race in Botswana, and the reliability bogey was about to strike again. With the Unifreight Ford not sounding at all healthy, the pair eventually pulled off the route with steam pouring out from under the bonnet. For van Tonder and Creel, it was the end of the road.
There was also a problem for Gary Berthold and Andre Vermeulen, who were delayed when the Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux picked up a puncture. While they were changing wheels, Class D leaders Louis Weichelt and Johann Smallberger in the N1 4x4 Toyota Land Cruiser were being closely followed by Class B leaders Kutsia Labuskaghni and daughter Sandra in the Raconic Zarko. Hot on their heels were Hein Moolman and J.D. Wolfart, who had a handy Class E lead in the 4x4 Megaworld Toyota Hilux.
To be world champion, you have to step up. To drive the fastest lap, to complete the perfect race, you have to step up. And for the chance to see it all, to meet the drivers and be the ultimate insider, step up to Johnny Walker Red Label. Buy a bottle and you could win an all-expenses-paid VIP experience for 2 at the Monaco Grand Prix. See promotional pack at participating stores.
With a dedicated 24-hour HD channel, there's only one place to watch the Barclays Premier League, and that's right here on Supersport.
The new Yamaha VMAX SHO. Faster. Stronger. Leaner. Lighter. Yamaha VMAX SHO and Skeeter FX. Yes, it is rocket science. Yamaha, for the performance of your life.
After the opening 40 kilometers, a large portion of the race route then took crews into the De Brugge military area, where there was no access for the general public.
At the final spectator point before entering the De Brugge military area, the situation at the front of the field had stabilized. The Century Racing CR3 of Colin Matthews and Alan Smith was running about 20 seconds ahead of the Lab 88 Bat of Bevan Berthold and Dani Stassen. Conditions were cool and overcast, but with little or no wind, sporadic light rainfalls did nothing to alleviate the dust problem. About a minute behind the 2 lead cars, Hammond and Wichard Sulwald were still in third in the Sulwald Racing SVR. The Sulwalds were now being chased by brother Cully and cousin Quinton in the Elegant Fuel Bat, with the 2 Sulwald cars closely shadowed by another father and son team in Nardis and Louis Alberts, who were running steadily in the Rapsa Bat. Behind the Rapsa car, Johan van Staden and James Rousseau were now at the front of Class B in the Atlas Copco Bat, and looming up behind them were championship leaders Shamir Bariawa and Siegfried Rousseau in the Total Porter. That meant both the Atlas Copco Bat and the Team Total pair had gone past early Class P leaders Mark Corbett and Rudy Balzar, who had run into problems in the Century Racing CR2.
Lesotho crew John and Sharon Moore were the surprise packages from the Friday prologue, and they had picked up a place when they went past Evan Hutchison and Daryl Curtis, who appeared to be struggling in the Motor White Revo 1. After starting 5th on the road, Hutchison and Curtis were now running 9th and had production vehicle leaders Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton looming up behind them. The Toyota crew were still doing battle with Naeem Musaji and Rehan Badania in the Maxxis Tyre Rack Jimco.
Next up were Thomas Rundle and Juan Moore, who were still second in the production vehicle category in the Baden Tyres Services Nissan Navara. They were leading an interesting little train with Grobler Tersteege RFS BMW not far behind the Baden racing pair. And hot on their heels were Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst in the RFS Toyota Hilux.
The stretch of the route through the military area produced more than its fair share of drama and was later dubbed as Puncture Alley by one crew with a sense of humour. The father and son team of Willem and Dana Vos were caught and passed by Duncan Vos and Rob Howie, with the Team Castrol Toyota pair having quickly made up a place or two. Vos and Howie quickly disappeared into the distance, but the Vossies picked up a place when they went past puncture victims Hannes Grobler and Henny Tersteege. A little further down the road, it was the turn of the Vossies to pick up a puncture when they whacked a rock lurking on the side of the road and were forced into an unscheduled stop.
Approaching the De Brugge military area, former SA champions Neil Woolridge and Kenny Schultheimer were going steadily along in their diesel Team Ford Ranger. Behind the Ford, there was a huge scrap between the Sarco of Swaziland pair John Thompson and Clinton McNamara and the RFS Toyota Hilux of Christian de Plooy and Henk Janse van Vieren. But it was inside the military area where most of the drama was unfolding. The Regent Racing Nissan Navara of Terence Marsh and Richard Leake went past Willem and Dana Vos, who were still on the side of the road after their encounter with a rock. A little further down the track, Marsh and Leake went past another puncture victim in the Grobler Tersteege RFS BMW. And were then passed by Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst, who had also lost time when they hit a rock that was to claim 1 or 2 more victims.
With Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst on a mission to make up for lost time, next up on the list for the Marsh Leake passing show were Duncan Vos and Rob Howie, who were cruising along with the Team Castrol Toyota, having run into a suspension problem. With Leake activating the device known as a screamer that warns the crew ahead that someone is on their tail, Vos and Howie politely moved out the way. The Marsh and Leake cameo was not over just yet, and next on the list were Thomas Rundle and Juan Moore, with the Baden Tyre Services Nissan Navara having expired with a broken gearbox.
After leaving the De Brugge military area, the route ran alongside the N8 towards Kimberley before switching direction towards Pietersburg and Jagersfontein. The final section saw the route then bisect the M13 and R706 back to the designated service point at race headquarters.
At the front of the field, there was more drama. Gearbox problems had sidelined the Century CR3 of early leaders Colin Matthews and Alan Smith and the Lab 88 Bat of Bevan Berthold and Dani Stassen. The Silwald family were now locked in battle at the front of the Special Vehicle Brigade, with Herman and Wichard leading Cully and Quinton by seconds. Johan van Staden and James Rousseau were third overall and leading Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau in the total porter.
A broken stabilizer bar that was flopping around at the front of the car was a worry for the championship leaders, and they had slackened off their pace. In terms of the championship, it was a setback for Variawa and Rousseau, who needed to finish ahead of both Silwald cars. Fifth overall were Nardis and Louis Albert, who were now nearly 3 minutes behind the leaders in the Rapsabat.
The demise of John and Sharon Muir in the Chenoweth moved reigning SA champion Evan Hutchison and Daryl Curtis up the pecking order in the Motor White Revo 1. With 4 non-finishers in 6 events, it had not been a happy season for Hutchison, and the Motor White car again looked to be struggling. But the big surprise was in the production vehicle category, where all the goings-on in the De Brugge section had produced a surprise leader in Bloemfontein crew Peter Ruthven and Rudy Brits in the Rubicon Toyota Hilux, who had avoided all the carnage. Leading a national championship race was a new experience for Ruthven and Brits and raised local hopes of a surprise hometown win. Christian de Ploy and Henk Janse van Vieren had also moved through the field to lie second in the production vehicle category.
Chasing after the two SP-class cars were John Thompson and Clinton McNamara, who were now almost 8 minutes behind Class P leaders Johan van Staden and James Rousseau. Behind the Swaziland crew, Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst were third in the production vehicle category and were less than a minute behind Ruthven and Brits. The De Brugge carnage had also seen Neil Woolridge and Kenny Schulthammer move into a menacing position in the Team Ford Ranger, and the impressive Marius and Yolinda Fourie had made huge strides through the field to lie third in Class P.
Aided and abetted by the drama around them, steady and spectacular progress had taken Terence Marsh and Richard Leek from 15th place to 5th in the SP class. Right behind the Region Racing Nissan Navara were Bloemfontein crew Lode Brein and Rian Geiling, with the Rubicon Ford pair also puncture victims amid all the goings-on in the De Brugge military area. They were staging a fight back after problems dropped them way down the order from 9th at the start. Also in fight-back mode were Hannes Grobler and Henny Terstege, who went steaming past Class D leaders Louis Weichelt and Johan Smolberger in the N1 4x4 Toyota Land Cruiser. They had a handy 8-minute lead over Dion Venter and Ian Palmer when Grobler and Terstege were playing a catch-up game after twice having to stop for punctures.
There were new leaders in Class B, with Bess and Lindy Besaidenout having taken the Adenko bat past the father and daughter combination of Kutsia and Sandro Labuschagne in the race Sonic Zarko. The Zarko had picked up gear selector problems and had lost wads of ground to the veteran Besaidenout and his daughter-in-law. Behind the Besaidenoats, there was a nice touch when Genuine Horsepower staged a brief race against motorized horsepower with a 4x4 Megaworld Toyota of Hein Mulman and JD Wolfhard still leading Class E.
The first car into the designated service area was the elegant field bat of Cully and Quinton Silwald, who are now leading the special vehicle category.
Yes, it's been brilliant. It's actually been a very nice route. We've had a lekker dice with our family, and we just managed to pass them within about 2 Ks from the finish. So hopefully we can both get to the finish well.
Guys, 100%, and now I believe the guys are about a minute and a half in front of us. But it's a flat-out race. If you have the highest top end, you're going to be first. That's how the race is.
Yeah, it rained this morning. It started getting cold, and then it stopped. It helped with the dust. We could get closer. We stayed very close to one another, and then it dried out suddenly, and then it was very dusty. We couldn't get close to anyone to overtake. If there's mistakes, then you get a chance to overtake, but that's it.
Second loop, okay, they seem to have fixed the problem with the gear selection, but now we got some catching to do.
There was huge excitement in the Rubicon Racing pit when Peter Ruthven and Rudy Brits led the production vehicle category at the DSP.
There's a lot of rocks out there that caught the front guys, and we managed to pass them without punches. And then my teammate got a flat about 40 k's. I managed to pass them, so yeah. Now just keeping it there, and we call them the next 280 k's.
Ons het sommer draai gekom, toe staan die ouens, man seker 5 van hulle so met papwiele. En ek sê vir hulle ons moet nou net kop hou. En ons het 'n paar ouens so gepas, en toe ons daar oor die Pietersburgpad is, daar langs daai lande, toe daar so 'n eysterpen wat ons nie gesien het, toe vang hy ons voorwiel. En toe kry ons nou weer papwiel.
It's going well. We haven't had any troubles after our 2 flat wheels, so we're just battling to get past one of the Rubicon cars, but we'll see what we can do now the next 2.
Nee, wat ons bakkie is reg, ons het geen moeilikheid met die bakkie nie. Die roete is lekker rof, baie slegte plekke, slote, vinnige dele ook. Dit is eintlik 'n baie lekker roete met 'n ietsie van alles.
With us being stuck for 8 minutes, I think Louis got a bit of a gap on us, but we're going to push hard and try and get it back.
For men who know what it takes to get what they want. Nivea body lotion for men.
This Monday, the Baggies aim to continue their steady climb up the table.
Absolutely beautiful.
Fancy their chances against a resilient Blackpool outfit. Blackpool versus West Brom, available in HD. Make the headlines where world football lives. Broadcast brought to you by MTN, everywhere you go.
The final leg of a dramatic Heman Auto 400, but the drama was far from over. The 2007 South African champions Cully and Quinton Zewald still led from Herman and Wichard Zewald, but the family feud was to end when Herman and Wichard hit a culvert and the Silvard Racing SVR was reduced to 3 wheels. That effectively put them out of the championship running, and in this context, the focus shifted to Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau, who had to win to clinch the Special Vehicle Championship. The demise of Herman and Wichard Zewald would lift Variawa and Rousseau into second place and put Class P leaders Johan van Staden and James Rousseau in line for a finish on the podium. The Atlas Copco bat had lost its roof, but van Staden and Rousseau were putting the finishing touches to winning the Class P championship.
Reigning Special Vehicle Drivers champion Evan Hutchinson and Darrell Curtis were also destined to join the list of non-finishers when the Motorite Revo 1 went out with mechanical failure. Behind them, Bloemfontein pair Peter Ruthven and Rudy Britt still led the production vehicle category in the Ruricon Racing Toyota Hilux. But the local favourites were now under severe pressure from championship leaders Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst. It would only be a matter of time before Visser and Badenhorst would hit the front of the field, but behind them, a recipe for more drama was brewing.
Christian de Ploy and Henk Janssen van Vieren started the day lying 10th in the production vehicle category, but the constantly shifting sand throughout the day had moved them up to 3rd in the RFS Toyota Hilux. Former champions Neil Woolridge and Kenny Schulthammer started 3 places ahead of the Toyota, but the Team Ford Ranger was now running 1 place behind the young Pretoria pair.
Nardis and Louis Alberts were still a solid 4th overall and 3rd in Class A in the Rapsa Bat, with the father and son combination being chased by Louw de Bruin and Rian Greylen in the Ruricon Ford Ranger. Behind the Bloemfontein crew, the retirement of Duncan Foss and Rob Howie left Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton the only Team Castrol crew still running. And before the day was over, they would face more of the frustration that had characterized their season. After arriving at the designated service point in 5th place, the Regent Racing pair of Terence Marsh and Richard Leake had dropped 2 places to De Bruin and Greyling in the Taylor Houghton Toyota. Behind the Marsh Leake Nissan Navara, the Atlas Copco Toyota of Gary Berthold and Andre Vermeulen was running strongly. But Berthold would finish the race with a broken left hand after the steering wheel snapped back at him on a rough section of the route. Archie Rutherford and Mike Lawrenson had moved into 2nd in Class P, but were under pressure from Hannes Krobler and Henny Tersteger, with the aging bat of Marius and Yolinda Ferrie also part of a little train of cars that were running close together.
In only their 2nd outing this season in an SP class vehicle, reigning Class E champions Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux were looking at a top 10 finish. Sheer pace is not a forte for the Northwest team, but they get the job done, and theirs was another solid performance. Behind them, Class D leaders Louis Weichelt and Johan Smolberger were another crew headed for retirement, with the N1 4x4 Toyota Hilux failing to see out the distance. There was also to be disappointment for Class D leaders Hein Moorman and J.D. Wolfart, who were also to fall by the wayside in the 4x4 Megaworld Toyota Hilux. Steaming along behind them was Bez and Lindy Besadenhout, who were still firmly in control of Class B. The Adenco bat would soon move over for Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson in the 2nd Regent Racing Nissan Navara. After a nightmare prologue, Whitehouse and Carlson started stone last in the Production Vehicle Championship and were on the comeback trail.
Joining the Roly-Poly Club on the Toyota 1000 Desert Race saw Whitehouse lose a terrific record of 27 consecutive finishes, but a brave drive took the brothers-in-law to the brink of the top 10 finish. Also working their way back through the field were early Class P leaders Mark Corbett and Rudy Balzar in the Century Racing CR2. The 4x4 Mega World pair of Dion Fenter and Ian Palmer lost 8 minutes on the first loop of the race, but the demise of Louis Weichelt and Johan Smolberger would hand them Class D on a plate. Behind the Toyota, the father and daughter pair of Coetzee and Sandra Labuschagne were not making any impression on Class B leaders Bess and Lindy Bezuidenhout, and the Race Sonics car lost a few more seconds when the Labuschagnes moved out of the way to let Willem and Dana Vos through in the quicker SP class car.
Early in the afternoon, ominous storm clouds were brewing and would provide the race with a sting in the tail. At the front of the special vehicle field, Cully and Quinton Zumwalt were still leading Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau, with the total porter now minus both front suspension stabilizer bars and unable to match the elegant fuel bat for pace. It was a development that was to throw the championship wide open.
Pretoria crew Johan van Staden and James Rousseau were still third overall in the Atlas Copco bat, and the Class P win and the championship to boot were the cherry on top of a remarkable season for the pair. Behind van Staden and Rousseau, normal service had been resumed in the production vehicle category, with championship leaders Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst on track for their third win of the season in the RFS Toyota Hilux. Nardis and Louis Alberts were still tearing along in the Rapsa bat, and behind them, Christian de Ploy and Henk Janse van Vieren and Neil Woolridge and Kenny Scholthammer were locked together in a hectic battle that would reach a climax a kilometre or two from the finish.
Also locked in battle were the Region Racing Nissan Navara of Terence Marsh and Richard Leek, who had the RFS BMW of Hannes Grobler and Henny ter Steege climbing all over their back bumper. The BMW crew would eventually force their way through, but behind that scrap, there was a little cameo performance from Bloemfontein-based Rubicon Racing teammates Louw de Bruin and Rian Greiling and Peter Ruthven and Rudy Brits. The De Bruin and Greiling Rubicon Ford Ranger had moved ahead of the Ruthven Brits Toyota Hilux. After leading the production vehicle field into the designated service point at the end of a drama-filled first loop, Ruthven and Brits had gradually fallen away and were destined to finish seventh.
Now chasing after Ruthven and Brits were Marius and Yolinda Fourie with a late charge, taking them into second place in Class B, ahead of Archie Rutherford and Mike Lawrenson in the Regent Racing Jimco. It was a superb performance from the Fourie husband and wife pair, who have graduated from the Northern Regions Championship. The Fouries and the Rutherford car both got past Ruthven and Brits, and then it was the turn of Taylor and Houghton. Ruthven and Brits politely let the Toyota through, only to regain the place when Taylor and Houghton picked up their third puncture of the race.
A brave performance from Gary Berthold saw the Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux hold on to 9th place. After the finish of the race, Berthold needed treatment for his broken hand, but he and Andre Vermeulen managed to keep at bay veterans Yanni Visser and Jorx Leroux, who were delighted with another characteristically solid display that brought them a top 10 finish second time out in the SP Class Toyota Hilux.
Late in the race, Terence Marsh and Richard Leek gave up another place when the Regent Racing Nissan Navara moved out of the way for Mark Corbett and Rudy Balzar in the Century Racing CR2. After the race, Corbett earned kudos for sportsmanship when he pointed out that he and Balzar had overstayed their welcome at the designated service point, and a scoring error had placed them second instead of fourth in Class B. There were no such problems for Bess and Lindy Bezuidenhout, who took Class B and wrapped up the championship. The Adenko pair came in ahead of Toyota 1000 Desert Race winners Coetzee and Sandra Labuschagne to finally shut the championship door on the Race Sonics Zarco pair.
There were also new leaders in the Class D Championship, with Dion Venter and Ian Palmer taking the 4x4 Mega World Toyota Hilux into first place. Early season pace setters Dewald van Breda and Johan de Toy were reclassified as Class SP competitors and were among the non-finishers. After the demise of Hein Moelman and J.D. Wolfart, the 4x4 Mega World sister car in the hands of Pikkie Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus took the Class E laurels. They closed in on championship leaders Lance Woolridge and Ward Huxtable after seeing a late challenge from the Rubicon Racing Ford of Gerald Leroux and Willem Pretorius. With storm clouds looking more ominous than ever, Leon Botma and Quinton Brandt completed the Class B podium in another aging bat.
Back at Windmill Casino, there was chaos. Minutes before the expected arrival of the first car, a freak wind and violent thunderstorm wreaked havoc. The pits in the start-finish looked like a war zone. While spectators ran for shelter, the start-finish archway was blown away with another sponsor branding ripped from their moorings. Gazebos had been blown away and lay scattered around the pits area with damage everywhere you looked. Frantic work by race officials and volunteers had cleared the road by the time race winners Cully and Quinton Sulwald arrived on the scene to take the checkered flag.
The Sulwalds were followed by Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau and Class P winners Johan van Staden and James Rousseau, with the Special Vehicle Championship now going to the wire at the last event of the season. With only 6 points separating Variawa and Rousseau and the Sulwalds, the RFS Magalies 400 in late November will decide the championship.
For us coming here to Bloemfontein for the first time, lovely. We really appreciate the opportunity that we had to race here, and I'm glad that we won the inaugural Bloemfontein race. Very nice.
The final margin of victory was nearly 3 minutes, but all the focus is now on the final event of the season. A feature of the results saw 4 Class B cars and 2 Class B entries in the top 10.
When Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst took the checkered flag, they made sure of this year's Production Vehicle Championship. The new champions were followed home by former champions Neil Woolridge and Kenny Scholthammer and Christian de Plooy and Henk Janse van Vieren. The third place RFS Toyota Hilux was carrying the scars from a late race clash with the Team Ford Ranger and limped across the line with wheels out of kilter.
On the podium, a delighted Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst celebrated victory and the championship in the traditional manner.
On the first lap, we had a small problem. We had a puncture, and yes, a lot of people went past, and luckily they also had punctures. So yes, it was a mixture of fortunes today for everybody. So, but luckily on the final lap, about halfway through the lap, we got past Peter. Unfortunately for him, he had a flat tire, so we went past him, and from there on, we just tried to keep everything sweet all the day.
At the end of the day, just 1 second separated Visser Badenhorst and Woolridge Scholthammer, with the Himan Auto 400 providing drama right to the very end.
A new ABSA award of 5,000 rand for the team displaying the most sportsmanship on the event went to the 4x4 Mega World squad, who donated the cheque to the Ria Tabile Children's Home in Klerksdorp.
You know, nobody gives anybody anything anymore. And for them to help an orphanage in Klerksdorp is just great. I mean, they need every cent they can get. And for ABSA to give that 5,000 rand, that's great.
The racing and the late intervention of the weather conspired to turn the Himan Auto 400 into one of the most dramatic races of the season and left Himan Auto Managing Director Jacques Strydom delighted with the weekend.
Almal wat deur Bloemfontein ry, dink die Vrystaat is plat. En ek dink die roete wat vandag uitgesit is, dit bewys die Vrystaat is nie so plat nie. Die weer dink ek het dit baie interessant gemaak. Ons het vandag 3 seisoene in 1 dag gehad, so ek dink dit was 'n wonderlike race geweest.
Next on the ABSA Off-Road Championship, the RFS Magalies 400 at Tarleton International Raceway on November 19th and 20th. Catch the action here on Supersport.